there, you may call me Miss Introvert, and here on this channel we write, we edit, we learn, and we grow, and I am growing right along with you guys, so we're all in the same boat. Today we are making a video for those of you who really want to edit your poems and make something really organized out of the work of art that you've already made, and you want to get it polished and ready for publishing. Comment down below any other questions of poetry that you have. I love poetry. I've made videos about it in the past. I love writing poetry. I love reading it. And there's so many of you who love reading and writing poetry as well, so please let me know if you have any questions. I would love to hear about them. Hopefully answer them or direct you to someone who knows even more about what they're talking about. Also, my new epic fantasy book, Before Red Fire, is now out on Amazon. It is my debut novel as an indie author, and if you are somebody who really just wants to treat themselves to a long, immersive fantasy read, please go ahead and pick one up for yourself or for your fantasy-loving friend. And if you'd like to be a beta reader or an ARC reader for my upcoming sequel to the book, please let me know in the comments. I will send you a Google form. Or you can let me know on my TikTok or my Instagram, send me a DM, and we can start talking about that process together. Now, poetry. Let's get started. Number one, read it through. What I like to do as I'm first getting ready to edit a poem, I like to read it through and then read it through again. And I make some notes on what I like and what I don't like. I might change things around a little bit, but it is smart to make a second document or a second print before you change anything around, just to make sure that you have the original copy. What if you change something and the original was actually something that you liked? While I'm reading the poem, some of the big things that I look for are the literary elements that I have used in my poem, whether consciously or unconsciously. I'm making notes on the rhythm, seeing how I can make it more complete and coherent for the reader. That means I'm also reading this poem out loud. This might look like adding another obnoxious word to your alliterative sentence, your alliterative line. The slippery river slithered a river down the slippery river. Oh my gosh. The slippery road. Oh my frick. The slippery road slithered a river down the slimy hill. Nailed it. Kind of. I might add like a snail and turn it into a simile and give my tongue even more bigger problem trying to say all these things. Again, you're going to be reading the poem aloud, so you're really going to be tuning into seeing how it sounds. You're really going to be going into the mind of a potential reader. Even if it's not something I intended to rhyme, I still want it to sound pleasing to the reader. If you know anything from your poetry classes though, if your poem rhymes, you're going to want to add some meter to it. Now there's freedom in poetry. Whatever you want to do it. It's art. But it's always helpful to have some meter in there. It's just nice to see that consistency in the poem, and it's fun for the reader to figure out that consistency if they're trying to explicate your word. You might do something along the lines of A, B, A, B, A, B, C, C, where each of the lines end in seen, wrong, clean, song, bean, long, cute, boot. And rhymes can go anywhere in poetry. They can be in the middle of a line, they can be at the beginning, they can be at the end. Whatever structure you're creatively putting together, the choice is yours and you can do as much as you want. Just don't overdo it. Number two, learn from the greats. If you want to write poetry, chances are you've read poetry. And with Taylor Swift's new album coming out, The Tortured Poets Department, on April 19th. So close yet so far. You will probably get buckets of inspiration. I just started writing songs because of her. I've never written songs before. Not since I was little. But it was so fun. Just watching her write songs from her album, it looks really fun and I wanted to do that. Have you seen the documentary where she was writing about... Sorry, Swiftie alert. Actually, don't be sorry for being a Swiftie, ever. Anyway, Taylor Swift being a great example. Not only do we get inspiration from the storytelling, grieving, celebrating, romantic, historic, modern, ancient, philosophizing, gut-wrenching, heart-swelling, pompous, erotic, and raw poets, we also get a sense of what to do and what not to do. Of course, we don't have the draft of their poems at our disposal all the time, so we can't really see how they got from square A to square B. Is that the right term? From point A to point B. So if you have any poets that you look up to that have an autobiography, or they have a poetry book that shows you how they wrote their poetry, I would pick it up. One of my favorites is the Poetry Handbook by Mary Oliver. In a poetry handbook, you get a lot of general rules about poetry, but you also get to see the way that she reads through specific poems by very famous authors and how she explicates them, tears them apart, so that you can start tearing into your own poetry. It's basically a look inside the poems of a master writer. What about the poets who didn't have access to writing about their poetry? Sure, there's journals and there's letters. This is where poetry classes and poetry commentary come into play. There are literary scholars who delve very deep into the famous poems that we all know and love. They look at the inner workings of poems throughout history. Check these out and take a poetry class. Learn how to explicate poetry. A poetry handbook is another great resource for this. You might also want to read poetry books that have different types of criticism. That might be feminist criticism, queer criticism, new criticism, African-American criticism, psychoanalytic criticism, Marxist, post-colonial, reader response, etc. Having a diverse amount of lenses through which to look at literature, according to my lit theory class at least, will help you develop very mature reading skills of the poems that you write and that others have written. But you don't have to become a major in English like I did, or become a world-class scholar to study poetry. You can just read it. Go to your library, find a couple of poetry books that entice you. Maybe there's a specific art style that comes with it. Maybe one of the first poems caught your eye. Maybe it's a poet that you've been dying to read lately. Maybe you found out that your favorite author who writes novels also has poetry. Pick those up and read them aloud. Study how authors use literary elements like metaphor and alliteration, meter, and imagery to pull you into their world. Write about how it makes you feel. How easy was it to step into their world? How did you feel when you left and came out of it? What is your reflection? What are your general thoughts about the quality? What themes are you starting to put together from the poem? Is there any symbolic meaning that really jumps out at you? As you're writing down your thoughts, you might just end up with a poem about a poem. So just trust your readings and write about what you read. You might even try rewriting the poem in your own style, just to see how it feels. When you feel ready, take what you've learned and make some changes to your own poem. And you're not copying what you found. You are using the tools that you've studied to be inspired and enlightened to write your own original work. What feelings do you want your reader to have when they read this? What clues are you leaving in your poem, and how can you get them to peek out at your reader? Get into the headspace of the poems you've read, and then make a nice cozy room in your mind for your own original poetry. Or maybe it's a wild space, but it's just a way for you to get creative and strategic. One book that I found helpful is Diane Lockwood's The Strategic Poet. This book has so many different examples on what you can do to edit your poem and how you can start strategizing before you even start writing things down. Highly recommend. Number 3, Poetry Pals. I was trying to riff off of Pen Pals, but you get the message, right? Get in touch with some peers. If you're in school, ask for help from an English professor or English students, and get some feedback on the poems you've written. If you've chosen the right peers, they'll respond by not only praising the work you've done, but also pointing out the flaws and places to improve. And they'll offer you helpful suggestions on how to fix those things. Your job is not taking anything they say personally, of course. As Natalie Goldberg says in her book, Writing Down the Bones, you are not the poem. It's its own entity now. And when your feedback is ready, consider what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep, because you know your poetry better than anyone. It's just like being a parent. I'm not a parent, so I can't really speak to this, but being a pet parent, there we go. I know what's best for my pets, and therefore I know how to make them thrive. And having poetry friends is a great way to grow and be in a community of writers, and a writing community is so important so that we writers aren't alone. You get to geek out about poetry, you get to geek out about writing. Your peers might even offer you poems that they've written and they want you to critique them. As you read them, don't be hard on them. Just give them some advice, give them some critiques, offer suggestions just like they gave you, if they did, hopefully. And remember to be nice, because they're also being just as vulnerable as you were when you gave them poems. Being a poet is being very raw sometimes, so give some time to just appreciate that, appreciate them. You guys submit poems a lot in the comments, and you guys are being so vulnerable and brave, and asking for critiques is also really brave. Just shout outs all around. Kings, queens, all around. We have to be vulnerable, guys. So offer your suggestions, but be nice. Make sure to put like the praise on the top and bottom of your critique sandwich. If you're having trouble finding peers, you've come to the right place. We talk about poetry here a lot, You guys, again, leave poems in the comments a lot, and I love seeing them. But yeah, everybody make some friends down in the comment section. Let's just have a nice little discussion. Make sure that you post your discussion and then post to 2 peers. Oh, wait a minute, that's homework. Don't think of it as homework. I sound like a college professor. It's not homework. It's just fun, even though socializing isn't fun. But we're in the safety of the online community. So no cyberbullying, but just be nice, be welcoming. We're all welcome here. Right, Chester? He's sleeping. But yeah, that's your poetry friend homework, not homework. So do it, but you don't have to. But it'd be fun. Bottom line, you guys are always welcome here. Otherwise, there are plenty of online and local groups that you can join. Check your library, your school, your internet research, man. There's like so many writing associations for horror writers, fantasy writers, sci-fi writers, whole mix match of different kinds of genres, but we're talking about poetry. Oh my gosh. Get into some poetry societies and associations. They might come with college scholarships. They might come with benefits. Those are awesome. Look for those benefits because we writers need help. Life, I do. Also, check for writing friends on TikTok. They will come for you if you put poetry in your username. In a good way. Here is to making some good poetry pals in 2024.